He stood across from me in that meeting room, looked me dead in the eye, and said I was too emotional to ever lead. A week later, I quit without saying a word. Within a month, 3 of his biggest clients were mine. Less than a year after that, I hit $1 million in revenue. From a business I started at my kitchen table. Ever been underestimated so badly that it turned into your biggest reason to win? I gave everything to that job. I came in early, stayed late, skipped vacations, and worked through weekends without ever complaining. When things got tough, I was the one picking up the slack. When a client was about to walk, I was the one fixing it. And when junior employees joined and needed training, I did it on top of my workload because I genuinely wanted to help the team grow. I thought that kind of dedication mattered. I really believed someone was paying attention. But in the end, none of it meant a thing to him. He never said thank you, never acknowledged the extra hours or the sacrifices. And I kept telling myself maybe he just wasn't the type to say it out loud. But deep down, I knew he saw it all. He just didn't care. It was convenient for him. I made his life easier without ever asking for credit. So he gave none. What made it worse was how different things were for the men in the office. I noticed it early on. When a male colleague raised his voice during meetings, it was seen as passion, assertiveness, leadership. But the one time I spoke up with the same tone, I was pulled aside after the meeting and told I needed to calm down, that I was being unprofessional and too sensitive. They never said it directly, but the message was always there. My emotions were a problem. My confidence was aggressive. My ambition was too much. Then came the promotion. I had spent over 5 years in that company. I'd managed projects solo, saved accounts from collapse, and even pitched strategies that brought in hundreds of thousands. But when a leadership position opened up, it was handed to someone younger, a guy who had been there barely a year. I had trained him, literally. He used to ask me questions about the software we worked on, but apparently, he was easier to manage. That's what my boss said to me when I asked for feedback. Not less qualified, not more experienced, just easier, less opinionated, less emotional. That was the moment it all clicked. It didn't matter what I had done or what I was capable of doing. He had already put me in a box, one I was never going to escape as long as I stayed under his leadership. I thought my hard work would speak louder than his bias, but it never did, because he had already decided I wasn't leadership material, not because of my performance, but because of who I was. And that's when I stopped trying to impress him. I stopped waiting for him to notice the years I had poured into his business, because I finally understood something painful but true. Some people will take everything you give and still act like you brought nothing to the table. That realization didn't just hurt, it changed me. And in the long run, it set me free. After the promotion went to someone I had trained, something in me changed. I stopped giving my energy to trying to prove my worth to people who had already decided I didn't matter. I wasn't going to complain. I wasn't going to ask for another chance. I was done begging to be seen. Instead, I got quiet and focused. Every single meeting I went into after that, I treated it like prep for my future, not his company's. I started keeping detailed notes. Every time I had a call with a client, I paid attention to more than just the business. I listened for pain points, frustrations, what made them happy, and most importantly, what made them loyal. I began tracking which clients trusted me the most, who asked for me by name, who sent follow-up emails with real appreciation. And I didn't do this to be sneaky or shady. I did it because I knew the day was coming when I'd have to bet on myself. And when that day came, I needed to be ready. I still did my job. On the surface, nothing changed. I was professional, kind, focused. I helped colleagues, delivered on deadlines, showed up to meetings with a smile. But under that calm, I was planning, quietly, patiently, one piece at a time. I built a spreadsheet of client contacts, public ones, the kind shared in emails and visible in calendars. I mapped out a rough structure for how I could offer the same services, but better, more flexible, more personal. And I researched everything: business registration, invoicing tools, marketing platforms. What I didn't know, I taught myself late at night while everyone else was binge watching Netflix. The best part, he thought I was checked out. That was the irony of it all. My boss believed I had finally accepted my place, that I'd settled into the background. I stopped speaking up in meetings, so he assumed I had nothing to say. He didn't realize I was just done wasting my ideas in rooms where no one was listening. He thought I was fading, but I was building, stronger than ever. And because he never saw me as a threat, he never saw it coming. By the time I handed in my resignation, I wasn't leaving empty-handed. I had a full business strategy drafted, a name picked out, a domain registered, and 3 clients already willing to switch to me the moment I went independent. These weren't small clients either. They were major accounts, and they were only staying with the agency because of me. They told me that. I had spent years earning their trust, not just by delivering results, but by genuinely caring about their goals. I didn't make noise, I didn't slam any doors. But when I left, I took more than just my nameplate. I took experience, connections, and the quiet confidence that comes when you know you've been underestimated for too long and you're finally ready to turn that into something of your own. The morning I decided to resign, I didn't feel scared. I didn't even feel nervous. What I felt was something deeper, like I was finally breathing after years of holding my breath. I walked into that office with my resignation letter printed, signed, and folded neatly in my bag. I had read it over at least 20 times the night before, not because I doubted myself, but because I wanted every word to remind me that I wasn't walking away. I was walking forward. I waited until after our weekly check-in meeting. He barely looked at me the entire time. When he did, it was with that usual smug expression, like I was just another name on his calendar. I stayed quiet, took notes, nodded when I needed to. There was something almost poetic about sitting across from him, knowing it was the last time I'd ever have to do it. When the meeting ended, I asked if we could talk for a moment. He looked surprised, maybe even a little curious, but waved me into his office anyway. I sat down, didn't bother with small talk. I just pulled the letter from my bag and placed it on his desk. His eyes scanned the page for a few seconds, and then he actually laughed. Not just a small chuckle, a full laugh, the kind that says, "You're not going to make it, and I'm not even trying to hide it." Then he leaned back in his chair and said, "Good luck out there. You'll be back when it fails." He said it with so much confidence, like failure was a given. Like people like me, people he called too emotional and too difficult, weren't built to lead or create something on their own. In that moment, I saw him clearly. He didn't just doubt me. He didn't believe I was capable of doing anything without him. And maybe that's why it felt so easy to walk away. I didn't argue. I didn't try to explain my reasons. I didn't tell him about the clients waiting for me, the name I'd already built, the brand I was about to launch. I just stood up, gave a small nod, and walked out. I didn't owe him a single word. He had underestimated me from the start, and that was his biggest mistake. Because while he was laughing at me, I was already on my way to building something that would outgrow anything he'd ever touched. That laugh, it echoed in my head for weeks, not because it hurt, but because it fueled me. Every time I hit a wall or felt tired, I remembered the way he looked at me, like I was a joke, and it reminded me exactly why I had to succeed. That moment wasn't just the end of a job, it was the start of everything. The end of being overlooked, dismissed, and kept small. And as I walked out of that office for the last time, I felt it. Relief, power, clarity. He had no idea what I was capable of, but he was about to find out. Starting out, I didn't have much. No fancy office, no team, no funding. Just a secondhand laptop, a sticky note with my business name scribbled on it, and a determination that burned hotter than anything I'd felt in years. I cleared a space at the edge of my kitchen table, opened a blank Google Doc, and started planning my first client proposal. That little setup, me, my cheap laptop, and a lot of late nights, was my headquarters. I didn't reach out to anyone directly. I didn't poach. I didn't beg anyone to follow me. I didn't need to. The people who truly knew my work, who had experienced the value I brought to the table, found me. One by one, they emailed me. Clients I had spent years building relationships with, clients who had only ever renewed their contracts because they trusted me, not the agency I worked for. The first message came in less than 2 weeks after I left. It was short and to the point. "We heard you left. Are you planning to freelance? We'd rather work with you directly." That line alone said everything I needed to hear. It wasn't about brand names or big agencies. It was about trust, about real human connection. I had spent years being the one who took their calls late at night, who showed up to fix last-minute emergencies, who remembered their kids' names and their company's goals. They didn't feel heard by him. They felt dismissed. He was cold in meetings, always rushing, always pitching generic solutions. I listened. I adapted. I made them feel like their business mattered. And it did. By the end of the first month, 3 of his biggest clients had officially signed with me. No backdoor deals, no drama, just clean exits and new beginnings. Each one told me some version of the same thing. We were staying for you, not for him. And honestly, hearing that was both validating and heartbreaking, because I realized how much of that agency's success was built on the backs of people like me. Hardworking, overlooked, undervalued. I didn't have investors. I didn't need a pitch deck or $1 million launch. I had something stronger, loyalty. And you can't buy that with a logo or a sleek website. You earn it every day with consistency, empathy, and actual results. That's what followed me out the door. Not company secrets or stolen files, just trust. The kind that takes years to build and a single moment to prove it was never about the agency at all. Working from my kitchen table didn't feel small. It felt powerful. Every invoice I sent, every project I kicked off, was a quiet reminder that I didn't need anyone's permission to lead. I didn't need his approval. I didn't need his office or his contacts. I had built relationships on honesty and effort. And when I walked away, they walked with me, not because I asked them to, but because I had earned it. Those first few months felt like a blur. I barely slept. I barely ate anything that didn't come from a microwave. My days started before sunrise and didn't end until long past midnight. I was running on black coffee, raw determination, and the kind of rage that doesn't scream. It simmers quietly and pushes you forward every time you think about giving up. I didn't have a team yet. It was just me, a stack of client briefs, a laptop that overheated every other day, and the memory of his smirk when he told me I'd come crawling back. Every project I landed felt personal. Every invoice I sent was more than just a number. It was a receipt for my worth, a way of proving, one client at a time, that I didn't need his permission to succeed. I poured everything into my work. I over-delivered, not because I had to, but because I wanted every client to feel like they made the right decision by believing in me. The same woman he called too emotional to lead was now leading multi-million dollar marketing campaigns from a kitchen chair and a secondhand desk. I tracked every dollar. I remember the exact moment I crossed six figures, then multiple six figures. It didn't feel like luck. It felt like justice. Every cent was earned, and every cent came with a story. Clients who told me they felt heard for the first time, projects that went viral, word of mouth growing faster than I could keep up. I started hiring slowly, freelancers at first, then permanent team members, people who had also been overlooked, underestimated, pushed aside. We didn't look like a traditional agency, but we worked like hell. And clients noticed. By the ninth month, I was projecting a seven-figure run rate. When I finally hit the $1 million mark, I didn't throw a party. I sat in silence for a while, just staring at the screen. Then I cried. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because I knew exactly what it meant. Not long after, an email popped up in my inbox. It was from someone at Forbes. They were doing a piece on fast-growing women-led businesses and wanted to feature me. I read it twice to make sure it wasn't spam. Then I just sat there, holding my face in my hands, feeling everything rush in all at once. He had mocked my emotions, told me they made me unfit to lead. But those same emotions, the anger, the hurt, the pride, the empathy, were what built this. My emotions gave me the fuel. They gave me the heart. They reminded me to fight for myself when no one else would. That startup wasn't just a company. It was my answer to every dismissal, every eye roll, every closed door. It was proof that the very thing he tried to use against me was actually my greatest asset. I didn't just build a business. I built something that was mine, something no one could take away. Not him, not anyone. And I earned every damn penny of it. Success has a funny way of bringing people back from the past, the same ones who doubted you, dismissed you, or walked away without a second thought. After months of silence, after ignoring every part of my journey, he suddenly wanted to talk. It started small, a missed call, no voicemail, just his name flashing on my screen in the middle of a meeting. I stared at it, not because I was tempted to answer, but because I honestly couldn't believe the nerve. By then, the news was already out. The Forbes feature had dropped. The clients who once filled his portfolio were now proudly sharing testimonials about working with me. And my company? It wasn't just a side project anymore. It was thriving, growing, making headlines. Everything he once said I couldn't do, I had done. And I hadn't said a single word to him in the process. I let my work speak for itself. That silence must have gotten louder than any confrontation ever could, because he came crawling back with a smile he thought I wouldn't see right through. A few days after the call, an email arrived. His name sat in my inbox like it didn't belong there anymore. The subject line read, "Let's catch up," as if we were old friends, as if there was something innocent about what had happened. I opened the email, but I didn't read past the first line. Something about collaboration and exciting opportunities. I closed it without replying, deleted it. He had his chance to support me. He chose to mock me instead. The thing is, when someone shows you who they are, you can't forget it just because they suddenly remember your name. This wasn't just someone who doubted me. This was someone who made me feel small, someone who tried to shrink my voice in meetings, someone who laughed in my face the day I left and told me I'd come running back. He didn't believe in my vision, and more importantly, he never believed in me. So no, I didn't answer his call. Not because I was angry, not because I wanted to be petty, but because I had outgrown the space he once kept me in. I had built something bigger, not just in business, but in how I saw myself. And I knew, deep in my gut, that whatever he wanted now wasn't for my benefit. It was because he realized I had become something valuable, and he had let that walk away. People like him think they can burn the bridge and still walk across it later. They think if they knock you down and you rise, you'll still come back to them for approval. But once you find your own footing, you stop waiting for their validation. You stop giving them access to the parts of you they never appreciated in the first place. He doesn't get a seat at my table, not after pushing me out of his. That's not bitterness. That's boundaries. And the peace that comes with knowing you never needed them to begin with, that's the real win. For the longest time, I thought being emotional at work was a flaw, that speaking up too passionately, caring too much, or reacting when something felt unfair would automatically put a target on my back. And truthfully, for a while, it did. Every time I raised my voice or challenged a bad idea, I was told I was too intense. When I pushed hard for a project I believed in, it was called obsessing. When I got frustrated at being ignored or shut out, it was labeled drama. And when I finally walked away from all of it, that was the first time I realized those labels were never really about me. They were about control. The truth is, being emotional doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. It means you care deeply. It means you're paying attention. And in a world that often rewards cold, detached leadership, that kind of passion makes people uncomfortable, especially when it comes from a woman. We're told to be polite, to smile through disrespect, to sit quietly and wait our turn. And when we don't, they call us unstable, ungrateful, or hard to manage. But I've learned that the very things they tried to shame me for were actually my strengths. My passion helped me build real connections with clients. My empathy made people trust me. My high standards pushed every project I worked on to be better. And yes, I cried sometimes. When I was overwhelmed, when I was frustrated, when I felt invisible. But those moments didn't break me. They made me more determined to create a space where people like me weren't just tolerated, but celebrated. It's wild how fast people will try to turn your fire into a flaw. They'll use your emotions to paint you as unfit for leadership, while praising others for being driven or tenacious, for doing the exact same things. But that double standard doesn't have to define you. You can choose to flip it on its head. That's what I did. I took everything they tried to use against me and turned it into fuel. Not because I had something to prove to them, but because I finally stopped waiting for their permission to take up space. Things like this do happen to women who show up early, work hard, and still get overlooked, to women who speak with conviction and get called too much, to women who give their all and get told it's not enough. But it doesn't have to end there. You don't have to shrink to make others comfortable. You don't have to become someone else to be taken seriously. What I learned is that when you stop apologizing for your passion and start building with it instead, you don't just create success, you create freedom. You stop chasing validation and start making room for your own voice, your own goals, your own leadership. And in doing that, you stop asking for a seat at someone else's table. You build your own, and you fill it with people who see your fire and respect it, not fear it. That's not just power. That's purpose. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below. In the comments below. In the comments